Are you the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo, or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest? Two questions that have been held over Gojo's head since his friend departed him long ago, and two questions that have remained in my head for chapter after chapter since I read those fateful words. And finally, we're about to get the answer to that question. Chapter 261 may be the most divisive chapter of the entire series, with the revelation of Gojo's body being reanimated using Kenjaku's curse technique through Yuta. The decision to bring back arguably the most popular character after sending off that suits the character's desires very well caused an uproar. In an act of utter desperation and more of a contingency plan if all else fails, Yuta says once he kills Kenjaku, which him being so sure in his ability to do so shows just how powerful and how cold he is, by the way, he will have Rika eat him in order for him to obtain Kenjaku's curse technique, in the scenario that Gojo loses and falls to Sukuna. Everyone's in an uproar. Yuta tells him that if no one's willing to step to the plate and lose their humanity in order to go against the strongest person in the verse, then he'll put a burden upon himself. This statement alone shows just how much Yuta got that dog in him, and is also much more of a reflection of what it takes to become so strong in this universe to begin with. To leave behind what you may find value in order to obtain the strength you desire is something we've seen time and time again in this series, whether it be how people describe Sukuna or watching how Gojo reacted after he arrived to kill Toji. When sorcerers snap and give themselves to becoming stronger is when they're absolutely forces to be reckoned with. Now that being said, shouldn't this in theory mean that Yuta is going to dominate against Sukuna? Well, yeah, it certainly should mean that, but the problem here is that giving up his humanity in order to win, he may also be holding himself back by using Gojo's body. Obtaining Gojo's body came with a few we don't know unless we try caveats, and those in themselves are incredibly ballsy for Yuta to do. Dying to win and winning with a chance of dying, as Gojo told Megumi, kind of came back full circle in the form of what Yuta is doing here. We don't know what will happen after his 5 minutes are up, but the whole operation in general is something we have to commend Yuta to committing to, as he is finally in the right headspace that Sukuna and Gojo have been. But Yuta's biggest flaw in this operation was him assuming that acquiring Gojo's body would mean they could obtain victory. And it's also kind of disgusting that everyone kind of sees Gojo as just the strongest person there and not him as a person. They seem to think that if anyone else were in his shoes, that they'd also be just as strong. And while I was writing the script, 262 wasn't out yet, so I decided to hold off on it. But the chapter's out, and it kind of supports my argument. Bear in mind, this chapter was incredibly short, and this is only the beginning of their fight. But we did see Yuta get completely caught off guard and mollywopped by Sukuna, asking questions such as, is Sukuna using domain amplification while opening Malevolent Shrine? May not seem like it, but this single question alone doesn't bode well for Yuta, and I'll explain why. The answer is very simple. Sukuna outclasses literally everyone left by a long shot. His understanding of Jujutsu and how to take advantage of the cards he's dealt with is the exact reason why he's going to win. And on top of that, taking over Gojo's body wasn't going to be the answer, because at the end of the day, it's like this. If Tony Stark builds an Iron Man suit and you hop into it, you could use it, yeah, but you can't take full advantage of it the same way Tony Stark would. Sure, Kenjaku's technique allows him to use the corpse's curse technique as well, but if you're not adept in the fundamentals of Jujutsu enough to be able to use it appropriately, then what's the point? For example, Kenjaku has countless panels where he downright humiliates his opponents for their sheer lack of understanding Jujutsu. Now, of course, this nigga is like 1,000 years old, so I'm gonna brag and talk his shit, but I digress. During his fight with Sukuna, it appears that even Gojo's understanding of Jujutsu was on a level that even his students didn't fully comprehend. And this is where I also believe there's a disconnect. Despite having Gojo's body, Yuta doesn't think on the same level that Gojo does. And it's quite possible that he never will. Gojo on the brink of death was able to fully grasp the concept of reverse curse technique. This is what made him the strongest. Gojo was able to take Malevolent Shrine by using simple domain, nullifying its effect for a short period of time. This is what made him the strongest. When the disaster curses were slaughtering innocents, Gojo unleashed a domain expansion of 0.2 seconds off of pure instinct to nullify the effects it would have on those civilians in the area. This is what made him the strongest. Not saying his limitless curse technique and the 6 eyes don't play a factor into what makes him physically a threat, but Gojo, the person outside of his physical gifts, is what really makes him scary. Not saying that Yuta doesn't have any of his own impressive feats. My guy killed the same special grade curse user 2 times, but his mindset that his own gifts aren't enough to beat Sukuna and that the answer is to use his master's body is not the right answer either. While a very daring sacrifice, Yuta can only really do so much because he bet it all on winning since he had Gojo's body. But being in Gojo's body isn't enough. You have to be more than just a vessel. You have to actually think at a higher level to be labeled the strongest. I personally believe the only real way Yuta can do some lasting damage to Sukuna, because in my opinion he's not going to win, is if he stops trying to fight like Satoru Gojo and starts fighting like Yuta Okkotsu. Only time will tell. As I said at the beginning, the fight just started, but to bring this video to a close, Yuta will not win.